to me, I used to be a wine rep as well, so to me, giving great service is really what comes first. If you're just giving good service, most buyers will, I think, be very appreciative. I certainly am.
Hey guys, welcome to the Wine, Whiskey and Weed Show. This is your host Sid Patel and I'm here with Walter. He is a wine buyer at Oakville Grocery and they have a couple of stores in Napa and that's where he buys a lot of wines every day. We're going to talk about more on as the role of a wine buyer. You know, what is he really looking for when a premium region like Napa and Sonoma knocks his door? You know, how can wineries improve their pitch to a wine buyer like him? So Walter, thanks for coming to the show.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Why don't you introduce the audience and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up there, what you do as a buyer, and just to walk us through your journey.
Sure. Well, my name's Walter Hamlin, and I'm the wine director at Oakville Grocery and now Oakville Wine Merchant. I'm sure many have heard of Oakville Grocery. It's been a staple of Napa Valley for really 60 years as a premier, food lunch spot, really. It's a great spot. It's been owned previously by Joseph Phelps, Leslie Rudd, and now Jean-Charles Boisset, the Boisset family estates. And I buy wines for both of our locations. One's in Oakville, one's in Northern Sonoma and Healdsburg. And then we have this, in Oakville, there's this old building. It was the original owner's home. The grocery was originally established in 1881. Making us the oldest contiguously running grocery store on the West Coast. So this little old home had been, nothing but vacant.
So there was a store in front and home at the back?
Yeah, exactly.
Like the high street,
yeah,
London.
You can't miss it. You drive down 29 in Napa, and it's a first place a lot of people stop for, your great sandwich or coffee or whatever, and hopefully some wine. So the old home was vacant for a long time, and the newest owner, Boisset, decided to turn it into a history museum and a tasting room where we can taste wines with customers from every AVA, so American Viticulture area from Napa. All 16 regions are represented. We have a 100-point wine machine just for fun, but a way that consumers can come and really learn something and hopefully enjoy a myriad of wines, mostly from Napa Valley. My job is multifaceted in that I run purchasing for both of our off-prem grocery stores, which are small. They're mini. So I have a small section of worldly wines, and the majority of it is Napa. On the Sonoma side, majority Sonoma. And then the tasting room, I have got my on-prem license. So I'm lucky enough to pour wines by the glass. Mm-hmm. So I'm buying for a different set of wines in there. There's about 48 wines that we pour by the taste, half glass and full. So I'm looking for a very different set of wines for that room. And then on top of all of it, I run I just started it last year for the company, but came from a different retailer to run the website and the online program. So e-commerce emails 2-3 times a week and wine club and sort of things. So really my role is taken in a few different ways. And so I have a lot of outlets, which is great for salespeople. I used to be one, dragging a bag. So I try to let them know, if there's a wine by the glass that's got a great price, or it's just fantastic and we should represent it, or it fits into the appellation model of the tasting room, let's taste it. If it's something that is obviously selling well in the market, let's throw it out there. If it's press driven, and then online, it's still the Wild West online. So I'm looking to make sure that pricing's competitive. And what sells online might never sell in my grocery store.
Got it.
So it's kind of interesting.
So it's a good point. I mean, you get to exactly define what goes online, what goes on trade, what goes off trade. What are the differentiating factors? I mean, from my knowledge, let's say online, as you say, it is price, because lower price, maybe package, or how it looks on the internet. Right. So what are those kind of things? And then can you walk us through restaurant, and can you walk us through the store? What do you look for?
Well, for online, there's every different level, but mainly it's price. It's competitive, and so people,
you will Google what can I resell, and if someone is, a lot of merchants are cheaper,
sure.
No.
Yeah, well, and Wine Searcher is our best and worst friend at the same time, because you go on there and you say, man, look, I like this wine, but everybody's got it, and from from west to east, the price is ruined. So I really don't have a chance there, but it might work in the tasting room. However, if a wine's not represented at all, then you might have a leg up, because the one time, and I see it all the time, somebody searches for a wine. Yeah. Most consumers today aren't looking at Wine Searcher, and they don't know about it.
Yeah, they'll Google it.
We go to Google and Bing. But you actually have to put effort into Google and Bing. Just because you represent something on a website doesn't mean it's going to show up automatically through Google and Bing. So that, I attribute a huge part of my sales monthly just to marketing.
So you see their SEO efforts, you see their digital presence.
Yeah, and we started that, and it was night and day. Immediately I'm calling customers and say, hey, how'd you find out about us? I just Googled, Heights Chardonnay, and you guys seem like a reputable source. Like, really, I've never been here, no idea who we were. But price was the driving factor. And so it's not about always being the lowest price. Hopefully it's a name that people recognize. Oakville Grocery, all these guys, they're in Napa. If, and no offense to any other region, but if you're in someplace in New Jersey or Texas, you might not be recognized as the reputable source just because of your location. Yeah. So that has a part to play with my business for sure. But ultimately, I think a lot of customers, especially in the spirits world, are really looking at price. And then in the store, I'm in a vacation spot, right? I'm in the beautiful Napa Valley. So I notice pricing on the shelf, as much as I want to be competitive and beat the next guy out, it doesn't have to be the best, because people are really looking.
Once they're in sort of thing, right?
They're looking for something maybe unique, or the Napa buyers that have been coming to town for 30, 40 years or whatever, or even 5,
But then
10.
Don't you put your online, the store inventory online?
I do,
but then isn't that
it's different. And in some cases, I'll just note online, this is an online price only. Got it. So then there's no fights. And honestly, if a customer calls and says, hey, I was in the store, and we're always going to do right by the customer first. That's our job. It's the white glove service we want. But realistically, the store side, can sales. It's a great example. When somebody comes to sell me a canned wine, I'm not hurt by the price, and I don't need to be better than my neighbor, because the kind of customer that's coming in,
it's a utility. They want to buy and sip it and go to the park
and keep it going. So it's more about the immediate need, and I kind of the same with half bottles. I have a really large half bottle selection, and it's the lunch crowd. They're not surfing Infolio or whatever to look for like who's my best price.
Yeah, hey, there's a store. Let's stop.
Immediate need. I want red wine. I'm willing to spend this on per glass, and there it is.
Got it. So it's really more reverse engineering the type of the customer, exactly filling that needs, and then reverse, checking the price and all that stuff, right? So I think a good point which you said was online, right? Which is, if I was a wine brand, I would just write like XYZ now available in Oakville Grocery. I would make a blog post, guys, because the buyers love that. I can, so those kind of things you can do, especially while you're pitching. You can say, I'll make 3 blog posts and share it, and that can help. I believe, let's go on the grocery store. Let's wear that hat as a wine buyer. You sold wine as well, right? To the store, you said. So what would be that 5-minute best sales pitch that you would tell the rep? Like, just tell me this in your first 2 sentences.
Right. Good question. Good sales pitches for me, typically, all right. And it depends on the buyer. Everybody's different. For me, I love margin. I'm trying to, I'm hired to sell wine and make money. Right. So I'm looking to see, all right, can I be competitive? And is there margin here? And if it's an easy sell, look, man, this is a 98 point wine, and it's $95, retail. That no problem. That makes sense to a lot of buyers, for me in particular. And of course, the wine has to taste good, but majority of it's always going to taste
something
good.
Like you would want to know that. Like I would say, hey, Walter, this is a nice $24 cost to you. Retails at $49. You make 100 points. And the closest store you search online is $52. So you still make lowest price. You sell lowest. You still make 100 points. That sort of thing.
Yeah, that to me makes, I'm like, okay, now I'm good online. I'm good in the store, and I'm good on the margin at the end of the month. So I'm looking at all those things.
Because I guess the sales rep can talk about everything, but in your mind, you're like, what's the price? Just tell me fast. What's the price?
Right.
Save my time.
Right. In some cases, you know,
Got it.
if I look at it, you know, when writing e-com emails and things like that, what are the most notable points in that email? The 3 selling points. What's the elevator pitch? That's what I want from a rep. How am I just going to
What is that? Like package, price, and?
No, I mean, well, package.
I mean, in your newsletter.
Right? But if it says, okay, this the vineyard is next to Screaming Eagle Vineyards, right, or something like that. Vineyard is next door here. So who are the neighbors of the? If it's a wine of specificity, an appellation-driven wine, or a vineyard designate wine.
But that's you, right? Your list
That's
is
me.
Napa region.
Right, I'm Napa.
So obviously that will kick off as.
Okay,
understood.
Italian wines, if we want to name that. Okay, well, who is a notable person in Piedmont that I might, you know, equate this wine to be a neighbor of or something like that?
Oh, okay.
Because when I'm talking to a customer, I want to say, hey, you know X, Y, and Z brands. These guys are right there. They're a third the price, and I guarantee you're going to love it. If you don't love it, come back to me. And it's give me those kind of key selling points that I can easily spit out at somebody, give them a story, and or put that in an email, bullet points, and hopefully.
That's a good point. Just a little background. You know, I sold wine as well myself, and I had my own brands.
Yeah.
So I built a business to 100,000 cases and knocked doors. Right. My only pitch was it was an Australian brand called Friday Monkey. So my pitch was, this is $7.99. This is $6.99. Yellowtail $7.99.
Yeah.
And this is a better wine.
Right.
That's it.
That's all you need.
So
Yeah.
and you make the same margins or more.
Put them next to each other, and
Yeah.
a lot of people would, and say, hey, look, like this $1 cheaper, but try it. I guarantee you'll like it. You know, that sometimes simplicity of it is what buyers need, because you're working on so many different things. Give me that quick one thing. Even when I have wines on the shelf that I haven't sold in a while, if I see that rep again, I go, just remind me. Give me those 3 things, you know. And sometimes they want to wax poetically about the wine, but I'm a customer in this scenario, and my customer in a future scenario, they don't necessarily want that or understand it. You know, they really just want to know 2 quick facts, you know, and so that's always helpful to me when somebody's selling.
Let's go on the likability factor, which I've not touched much. You know, is which kind of sales reps you would like? You know, it can be personal as well, choice. You know, someone bringing you coffee, knows your name every time, doesn't mess up. Those kind of thing, to whatever it is. How can sales reps grow their likability factor to the buyers? What can they do to?
Good question. I mean, there are several different types of buyers, you know, and so they really got to hone their skills with each buyer. So really building rapport helps, you know. To me, I used to be a wine rep as well. So to me, giving great service is really what comes first. If I'm seeing a person come in and every time they say, hey, I'll follow up, and I never hear anything, or hey, yeah, I'm going to come by and swap out that bottle, and I never hear from them again. These types of things. Or there's continual mess ups on orders. I got to deal with it on invoice or off invoice. I mean, these are types of things that are now pushing more work on me. And as a wine rep, if you can offer a great service, you don't necessarily need to go in there every other weekend and spend $100 at the bar. If you're just giving good service, most buyers will, I think, be very appreciative. I certainly am.
Got it. And precisely if we break down service, you know, I remember when I sold, as I say, I used to go and see if there's a dust on my wine. I'll do that. I'll bring the bottles out. Maybe if shelf stocker is broken, I'll put it again. You know, walk us through, like, what kind of things can they do?
I love that. I mean, my store's so small. The wine selection's it's a great wine selection, but I have, you know, 700 brands overall, so it's not a humongous selection. So I got to be really careful with it, and in that I hope to have a nice range of everything. So for reps, good service to me is coming in, maybe looking to fill a gap that they see I don't have. That attention.
They do the homework first, and then
that
say,
attention.
hey, you don't have a $14 Pinot Noir from Oregon, and then they
start. And that detail to me is really nice. But also looking at previous sales history. I mean, a buyer might have only been in this position for 6 months or a year, and so looking at that and say, hey, back in the day, this account used to do really well. We should try it, and say, okay, yeah, well, let's give it a shot, you know. And so looking at that historical data, then just kind of daily stuff as far as I send in an order, that confirmation email, maybe confirming the pricing, making sure that when my invoice comes in, it's matching up with what I expect.
Like avoiding errors is what you call service.
Right, exactly. That big time. Or the vintage swaps, you know, that's extra work on the back end after I've already sent a PO or a confirmation email where I'm giving all detail. I expect that detail to come back because later on that's a surprise that maybe I'm having to answer to later. So that's kind of simple.
Yeah, they should not
admin.
create more work for you,
Right.
right? They should create less work for you.
Totally. Yeah. And I totally understand where people are coming from. They're driving around. You've got no time. You've got 10 appointments set up or whatever. But even if it's a early morning or late an evening reminder of, hey, new vintage is coming. Are you okay with that? Or I'm going to just send it back if you don't like the new vintage or something. Because most buyers are going to take the new vintage at a retail level. They just need to know. It'd be great to know. So those kind of simple admin are just great service points for me.
Nice. What about, helping you sell through, like support, depletions? What kind of programs you think works good for you, and wineries can invest in that sort of dollars to help you sell through?
Sure. Offering to pour for people. I do work in a really busy little store. So offering to come in and say, hey, would you have time? And I could sit off to the side.
Tasting?
Yeah, kind of a store tasting. People love it. I mean, right now we're still, because of COVID, we're still asking people to wait. So we have a minimum amount of people in our store.
Okay.
So while they're waiting, having somebody splash, their canned wine, and talk about their brand, it absolutely helps and sells through stuff. Hard to say if a bottle has been sitting on a shelf for a year and a half. Hard to say what you could do to help there. True. I have had some people say, "Hey, look, if I buy that bottle, can I get another placement? We try something new." That's very nice, but I don't expect that. I don't feel like
that's one-time sort of solution, but you can't. Yeah,
exactly. And so I think that's very kind when people to do that. If it's a winery and they're like, "Hey, actually, we don't mind taking that back. Let's move into maybe a different area within our portfolio that we could sell." That's very kind, but not ever expected. So I think tastings with consumers is fun, and always just looking at alternate ways of sales and say, oh, okay, well why don't we try to move something through another channel of yours? And just
like,
always looking for
for example, if our store is not moving that, let's put it online on a sale. I'll help you support that.
Exactly. That kind of thing. So just looking, always have the drawing board out. That's always really nice if wineries do that.
Nice. What about the on trade, right? Like you said, by the glass and the menu. What's the difference? Like, what kind of characteristics are you looking for a brand that fits the by the glass program?
Yeah, for me, because I have the wine room split up, and urge anybody who's coming to Napa to come try it. It's very neat. We give you a little tasting card. You taste through Napa's appellations and have a fun time. 50 wines, everything from occasionally Screaming Eagle and Harlan on by the taste, all the way down to the best $30 Riesling I can find. But it's all Napa, so I am limited to the varietal sets and the regions and our sub-regions, appellations in Napa. So for me, I'm looking for wines that are varietally correct. Hopefully they're good value. And I'm also looking for a nice length in the room. I don't want just big, opulent, concentrated wines. I want a little bit for the wine geek as well. Maybe something with a little breadth. So when people come in and say, hey, what do you have that's funky? And I could try to point them to something. So I'm really looking for a nice mix.
So you exactly would know your guest, like a personality, and then you would just say.
I often ask the guest, because they say, what's your favorite wine in the room? And I get to choose all
like
the
that craft beer tap we have, and then everyone has a
Exactly.
different thing, and then you just say, hey, here's a V-tail.
Totally. And so it's really I'm asking the customer a lot what they like to drink, because when they ask me what I like to drink, it's not
So you do that as well, like when you're around the bar?
Yeah, exactly. So that's typically, because people will ask, what should I go to first? You got to pick the wines. I'm like, well, I picked them all. They're all my babies, So I ask them, what do you like to drink? If the first thing that comes out of their mouth is Caymus Napa Cab, I'll point them to wines that are a bit more opulent, concentrated. If they say something like Keenan, that's a little bit old school, dusty fruit and high acidity, then I'll point them towards those types of wines. So old school wine buyer to maybe the new wine buyer.
Got it. Any closing remarks you would want to tell to the industry, like brands trying to grow distribution, in all kinds of distribution, like retail, off trade, and even online these days? Like where do you think they can improve, what they can do? Just tips for the reps.
Tips for the reps, especially for online. Check your pricing online before you're pitching those wines. Google and Bing them very quickly. They're usually coupled. Obviously different search engines, but look at that wine searcher. It's not dead, but customers aren't paying attention to it as much as retailers. And I'd say the same for wineries. I think a lot of wineries are still in the wine searcher world, and they're looking there to see who's low pricing. Look on Google and Bing. I think you'd be surprised, and you go to the shopping tab and sort from lowest to highest, and you'll see who are the big offenders out there and who might be just skimming for customers. So I can't stress that enough. I think that's good for a buyer to look at, and it's great for the seller to be paying attention to.
In fact, you should have a copy of your printout of that page so you can show to the buyers if it's really a good. You've not hammered the price. I mean, your partners haven't hammered the price. Let me put it that way. So if everyone can make 40% at the lowest, everyone wins.
Oh yeah, that'd be huge. Even if it's on a retail, even if it's 33, everybody's got their benchmark of what they should, right? But even if it's at 33, then really no retail buyer has a reason to throw you under the bus and say,
at least on the margin part, right?
On the margin part. And you say, well, that's traditional margin, and if they're working on a much higher margin to pay for catalogs or something, then that's different, and it might not fit that world. But at a minimum, if you do that homework before and say, we are on top of this, and we want to make sure that you're supported and it's fair game. That's a huge first step already, because then I immediately trust and understand the rep or the winery and say, good, you're doing well, because I know a month from now this wine isn't going to drop to me having to sell it for 20% less margin or something, or get shamed by a customer when they say, I just found this for
because it makes you look bad then, right?
Right.
You're just ripping them off.
Everybody's got a computer in their pocket, so that to me, I can't stress it enough, because I think it's very important. And depending on where you're at, it may not be, but I don't know, it's an easy thing to do.